No, he's not here today.
Ready? Okay. I'd like to call the Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners regular meeting for Wednesday, January 19, 2022 to order. Clerk, could we please have a roll call?
There are 10 present and 2 absent.
10 present, 2 absent. Please note that Commissioner Frederickson and Commissioner Sorich are absent for tonight. Commissioner Thatcher, could you lead us in the prayer and the pledge?
Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which so greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver Bow. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to the approval of minutes for the January 5th, 2022 regular meeting. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to approve the January 5th, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to items not addressed on the agenda, seeing that we don't have any tonight, we'll move on to the Chief Executive's report. I'll make it kind of brief tonight. We got some big projects going to happen here in the next week. We're going to introduce the ARPA grant, the $1 million community grant program that will start on the 24th, so this next Monday that we will do that. We've submitted all of our grant programs, and I know that Danetta is going to come up and speak to our change to the budget a little bit on the ARPA funding. So, you know, there's a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces that are happening within the government, and we're paying close attention to those, submitting grants, trying to, you know, allocate as much funding as we possibly can. I know there was an article in the paper today talking about, you know, the great projects that we have in line that we're trying to allocate as much of and get as much of the state funding that will match the funds that we have for our projects. But one of the mistakes I think that was in that article, it said it was COVID dollars, and it's not COVID dollars. So a lot of the community has been responding, saying they're taking money in response to COVID out of that, and this is allocated money that is dedicated, that really was directed to do a lot of these projects the way that we're doing them. And so we have set aside money for COVID response. The community is ready if that is to happen. So I want people, if the community asks you, we are not taking money that is in response to if we, you know, have to respond to COVID again. We're not taking that money and putting it towards these projects. So it was a little misquoted in there. I know that Mike does a great job of reporting, but when it's put in there as that it was COVID dollars, it really wasn't. This is the ARPA money that is allocated to Butte-Silver Bowl. So with that, I'm going to close the Chief Executive's report. And we'll move on to public comment on any items that are on the agenda tonight. So if you'd like to speak on any item on the agenda, please step forward, state your name, address, and the item that you'll be speaking about that is on the agenda. Mr. Markovic, welcome.
The project is 95% complete.
Asphalt is on 3 sides. The inner loop is complete. Curb, gutter, sewers, utilities, water, sewer, electrical. The work that is not complete is all on Arizona Street without exception. There's, the main lines are in on Arizona Street. The service lines aren't in, curb and gutter and asphalt. So we're here to ask for an extension till August. We have a schedule in which Hoffman Excavation will go back to work in March 15th, and they will be dusting off curbs by May 15th. And so that's what we're here for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on any item on the agenda? Please state your name, address, and the item on the agenda.
I am David Stonehawker. I am the current president of the Maywa Society, and there is an application for a parade permit before the council. I'm just here to answer any questions and support that application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on any item that is on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll move forward to Section 1, bid openings, public hearings, and/or presentations. We have one bid opening, communication number 2022-01. Dan Dennehy, Butte-Silver Bowl, Office of Emergency Management, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization for a bid opening for January 19, 2022 for a 400 kilowatt diesel generator and 1 automatic transfer switch for the Butte Civic Center. And we have Director of Emergency Services, Merrifield, with us today. Oh, and County Attorney Joyce, do we have proof of publication?
Mr. Chief Executive, we do have proof of publication for the bid opening and also for both of the public hearings, and all 3 appear to be in order.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. We're having Mr. Neary. He feels your pain.
We have just one bid from Third Element, Inc., from Helena, Montana. There's your bid bond.
And Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that appears to be in order.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce.
The price of the generator is $75,115. The automatic transfer switch is $41,000. And the labor and engineering, they bid $198,207 for a total cost of $314,322.
So the generator was $75,115, correct? The transfer switch is $41,000. And the labor, is that in engineering?
Labor and engineering,
Is $198,207
correct.
for a total of $314,322.
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Do you have an engineering estimate of the total for this that was estimated?
I don't,
Okay, thank you.
and they're together. in the
Okay.
bid.
Any other questions from commissioners? Okay. So do we make a motion to refer this back to? So Commissioner Shaw. Okay. I
Thank
didn't
you,
know if you were ready.
just waiting to be
Okay.
called on. Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I would move to refer the singular bid back to the manager, Mr. Merrifield here, of the facilities, and to come back to this body with the recommendation after reviewing that.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to send back to the Department of Emergency Services for review. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Anybody would like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to public hearings, we have 2 tonight. Both have been, have already been proof of publication. So we'll go to the first one, communication number 2022-06, Danette Gleason, Finance and Budget Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a public hearing on January 19, 2022, to amend the fiscal year 2022 budget to appropriate the American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funds. Director Gleason.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Danette Gleason, the Finance and Budget Director for Butte-Silver. Like Chief Executive had made opening comments, this isn't the first time you've have discussions about the use of these funds. The ARPA committee, which has several of your commissioners on that committee as well, as department heads and 2 or 3 committee, public committee members, are making these recommendations before you tonight. And like I said, they've been meeting pretty much consistently, at least monthly through July, from July till today, often more than once a month. So the projects, we're looking at appropriating budget. We're just looking at, right now at this point in time, appropriating funds that were Butte-Silver direct ARPA funds. Those are a total of $9.1 million will be requested in a budget resolution. They total a little over 7.8 million in the city allocated funds and 1.25 million in the county allocated funds. That will leave us about 6.3 million remaining in dollars. Again, this will just be a suggested budget. We will adopt a budget resolution, but a lot of this funding will be contingent whether we receive the additional grant opportunities, the over $21 million in projects that we've submitted in combination with our direct funding, the competitive grant funding with the state ARPA, as well as our minimum allocation funding from the state of Montana. So right now we're just appropriating or looking to appropriate the local government dollars, and then by chance, if we do not receive those other grant funds, which I'm very optimistic, we've had a lot of planning involved in those grants, but by chance we don't, then these funds would again revert back into the ARPA budget. However, there is the $1 million grant program that we're asking for on here. It's also on tonight's council agenda, seeking your approval. And I handed out several documents, the grant summary document relating to that program, as well as the application with the scoring criteria. And then we also handed out the budget worksheet. I think we'll talk a little bit more about that later tonight. On the agenda. And then we have already received funding for the Rocker Water and Sewer project. We were successful in the first round of ARPA competitive grant funding. We received a $937,000 grant from the competitive funds, and then $250,000 will come, that we're requesting come from our local government money. You've already committed to that when we had sent letters to council for support and concurrence with us applying for that grant. And other funding related to that grant is a $300,000 reserve from the Rocker Water and Sewer District themselves, and then a $125,000 planning grant from the state of Montana. So in total, again, we will be requesting, when we amend the budget, $9.1 million. That will leave, again, $6.3 million in these funds. Like Chief Executive Palmer had mentioned too, the ARPA funding we have set aside, we're not budgeting right now, but in this particular pot of money, 1.5 million has been set aside of these funding sources to respond to direct COVID for the community. We also have over $500,000 in CARES Act funds that have been set aside, so we're holding $2 million. And then we also have appropriated during the last year's budget cycle $500,000 of these ARPA funds. So when you adopted the budget last August, you appropriated almost $500,000 in funding for direct COVID response with health department activities for vaccine clinics and all the allowable conditions under the U.S. Treasury guidelines.
Thank you, Director Gleason. Any questions for Danette? By the commissioners? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. So I will call for Proponents. First call for proponents. Second call for proponents. Third and final call for proponents. Now we'll open it up for opponents. First call for opponents. Second call for opponents. Third and final call for opponents. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Moving on to communication number 2022-08. Karen Malakmi, Butte-Silver Health Officer, requesting Council Commissioners authorization to schedule a public hearing January 19th for the purpose of amending the fiscal year 2021-22 budget to allow for increased expenditures of unanticipated revenue resulting from amendment to the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Grant. Do we have Karen here, or Danette, are you? Director Gleason.
I'll address you appropriately this time as Chief Executive Gallagher.
That's okay.
Sorry.
I've been called worse, so.
Sorry about that. For the record, Danette Gleason, the Finance and Budget Director. The budget for these funds is an additional supplemental grant to their preparedness funding. It's additional COVID response funding. I think this is the third time we've been before you this year with these amendments to some of the various contracts at the Health Department for funding. This one is $130,000. It is appropriated for over 2 fiscal years. They will be looking at appropriating around $78,000 that will help with some of the staffing and then supplies for COVID response.
Thank you, Director Gleason. Any questions for Danette? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. First call for proponents. Second call for proponents. Third and final call for proponents. Seeing none, move on to opponents. First call for opponents. Second call for opponents. Third and final call for opponents. We'll close the public hearing. Moving on to Section 2, Consent Agenda. We have Section A, Committee Reports 1 through 4, and Section B, Communications 1 through 26. Do we have any friendly amendments or segregations? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I would like to segregate number 16, Communication 2022-38. And
That's
I'd also like to segregate number 20, Communication 2022-42. Thank you.
okay.
Item 20, did you say? Item 20?
So that's segregating communication number 2022-38, 16 on the list, and number 20, communication number 2022-42. Any other? Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I would like to segregate item number 2, communication number 2022-24.
Okay, that's item number 2, if I can get to it. 2022-24. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Could I segregate number 11, 2022-33?
That's number 11, communication number 2022-33. Any other segregations or friendly amendments? Seeing none, Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to approve consent agenda A 1 through 4 and B 1 through 26 with the exceptions of item 2, 2022-24, item 11, 2022-33, item 16, 2022-38, and item 20, 2022-42.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving back to communication number 2022-24, J.P. Gallagher, Chief Executive, requesting Council Commissioners authorization to establish a grant program and appropriate $1 million of ARPA funds to the grant program to assist city, county, businesses and agencies in the public health response addressing the negative economic impacts of COVID and services disproportionately impacted communities and/or groups as a result of the pandemic. Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I've been lucky enough to be appointed to the ARPA committee and been able to sit in on the conversations between the team as everybody worked really hard to figure out how to appropriately spend the money that's been given to us for economic recovery and public health response, all of those things. I would like to ask Director Gleason if she would come up and just give a short, high-level overview for the rest of the commissioners and the public, just high level on the grant requirements and maybe the limits as well.
Sure.
Thanks, Commissioner Shea. Director Gleason.
Yep. Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Shea, Commissioners, I handed out tonight to you the packet that includes the grant summary document that talks about all the requirements for an applicant to apply for a grant, also the grant application, as well as what a budget worksheet will look like for this grant process. The money is funded through the American Rescue Plan Act funding. It is through the U.S. Treasury, direct funding through the U.S. Treasury. We have some very you're going to find a lot of information in here because it's very restrict guidelines. The U.S. Treasury just released their final rule last week on the use of these funds. We were operating for the last several months on what they released as an interim rule for the U.S. Treasury. Some of those changes have allowed for a little more flexibility in the funding than what was originally sought out in the guidelines in the interim rule. Just a quick overview of the grant application. The projects range from $40,000 as a minimum project to $100,000 maximum project or funding for a program. We must comply with the U.S. Treasury final rule and be able to meet all the reporting requirements. I can't stress that enough. It's just not going to be a simple grant process just because of our requirements that we have to meet the U.S. Treasury guidelines. These individuals that are applying for grants will be sub-grant recipients. They will have to file and have certain filing requirements based on their dollar amount. You'll see that in the guidelines. If they apply for a certain level of funding, I should say, they'll have to also apply on the federal website and be registered on the SAM site and be in good standing. They'll have to be in good standing with the Secretary of State of Montana and also have a local business license. So there's a lot of elements and hoops that they have to go through to meet the funding. The other is the guidelines and the restrictions of the ability to use these funds. So if an applicant comes forward and it doesn't meet some of the Treasury guidelines and we authorize the funding and they can't either meet their reporting requirements to us or the U.S. Treasury, it doesn't meet the U.S. Treasury, the local government is responsible for that funding. So if somebody applies for $50,000 and we don't appropriately award the funding to the right entity or it's not used appropriately and the entity does not pay us back, the local government is on the hook for these funds. So there's a lot of elements about looking in this grant packet, about looking at the entity's ability to report, be solvent, be able to use the funding appropriately, I will say. Not that everybody has bad intentions, but we do have to be very cautious, and then they will have to open their books to audit. So not only audit by the local government, audit by our independent auditors, audit by the federal government, and potentially any audit by the state government. Again, it'll be released on the Butte-Silver Chief Executive's website on January 24th. It'll also be available in the Chief Executive's office. Grants will be due back to the Clerk and Recorder's office. They will only be accepted at the Clerk and Recorder's office by March 7th at 4 p.m. Again, they're due back on March 7th at 4 p.m. in the Clerk and Recorder's office. They will not be accepted in any other departments or any other areas. They will date stamp them and time stamp them. It's not postmarked March 7th. It's received in the Clerk and Recorder's office on March 7th. We will be having some grant workshops just because of the detail of information that you have there. We haven't released those dates. On Monday, we'll release those dates and times, and we'll try to spread them out throughout the day so different entities have time to come to 1 or 2 different grant workshops and kind of walk through the information with us. And we're going to release them, maybe wait a week after, so that the individuals or entities have time to actually get the document and the information and kind of go through it and have time to look at it. And then we'll meet the following week, have some workshops so people can ask us questions of what our intentions are with this grant. We will have summaries on the final rule, as well as links to the U.S. Treasury, so that every entity really understands the qualifications and the different areas you have to meet in order to apply for these grants. And then there's also scoring out there, so every entity knows what the scoring is going to look like. And then, again, we encourage it to be the best use of funds for the entire community. So that's all I have now. I don't know if Commissioner Shea wanted to ask me any questions that I might have missed something.
Thank you, Director Gleason. Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Director Gleason, I don't have any questions, but I do want to say on the public record that without the career expertise that Director Gleason has, this would be a very difficult process for us to comply with. The requirements, the reporting, all of the compliance issues are very detailed and very extensive. And I just really want the public to understand what an asset we have in Director Gleason.
Thank you,
Thank you
Commissioner.
for helping the entire team.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Shea. And I wanted to add too, Danette and her team has done extensive research and looked into other communities and the way that they're distributing their grant funds and doing similar programs, and or if they are or not. And a lot of time and expertise went into that, and we do appreciate that, because the packet you see in front of here came from the Finance and Budget Department, and we appreciate that.
Chief Executive Gallagher, like you just stated, it is my team, takes a village, and so it took the ARPA committee, and then it also takes my whole team and staff to really research these things, but we do appreciate all the comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Gleason. Commissioner Shea. Or Shaw. Shea Shaw.
I say potato, I say potato, I'm just saying Shea Shaw.
Mistaken identities today.
I am also honored to be on the ARPA committee, and again, I also want to say the same thing to Danette. No, you don't need to come back up. And I really think, again, like Commissioner Shea was saying, that we've set the bar pretty high for the rest of the state. I'm just saying, I think, the way that we've been doing this, and that's going to really help us a lot through this whole process. So again, kudos to your department.
So Commissioner Shea.
Thank you again, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I would like to make a motion to concur and place on file communication number 2022-24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, multiple times, to concur and place on file. Anything on the question? And commissioners, please vote. And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to communication number 2022-33, David Stonehocker, Marwa Society, acting president, requesting council commissioners permission to conduct its Chinese New Year parade through the uptown area, led by Montana's Parade Dragon. The parade will occur on Saturday, February 5th, 2022, and will begin at 3 p.m. in the staging area in front of the courthouse. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Thank you very much, Dave, for being here. I wish an awful lot of people who put in communications would show up in case there's questions on it. I don't have any questions, but I know there's a lot of new people in our community, and I know this is something that I personally look forward to. The parade goes all through my district. I absolutely love it. I love the noise. I love the dragon. It's absolutely spectacular. You folks do a fabulous job with it every year. So for those who are not familiar, could you just let folks know a little bit about what this parade is and for? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Mr. Stonehocker?
Yes, it's in celebration of the Chinese New Year, which is actually February 1st, but we always hold our parade the Saturday after, so it's on a Saturday. It's part of the Meiwa Society celebrating Chinese heritage and history here in Butte, the Chen family, the Wachatai Mercantile, and the Meiwa Noodle Parlor, which are at 17 West Mercury Street. We bill this as the shortest, loudest Chinese New Year parade in the country, in the world. We kind of exaggerate that, but we welcome all of you to come and attend. Hopefully the weather's decent. Last time we had this parade at 3 o'clock that Saturday, 2 years ago, it was 1 degree. So hopefully it'll be nicer weather on the 5th. And if you have any questions, I'm free to answer them. And Commissioner Anderson, thank you for your support.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Stonehocker. Any questions of commissioners? No. Thank you for coming tonight. It does mean a lot when the communication is put in, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on to communication number 16.
Actually,
Oh, I'm sorry, we got to do a motion here. Commissioner Anderson?
Thank you very much. And just on another side note, on something else in judiciary involving fireworks, I believe we should make a note that we do put in an exception for this date for fireworks in the future. That being said, I'd make a motion to concur and with communication 2022-33.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to concur and place on file. Anything on the
And place
question?
on file.
Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
10 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to item number 16, communication number 2022-38. Bill Markovic, Managing Partner of Copper Fox Subdivision, requesting Council of Commissioners permission for a formal extension of preliminary plat deadline for January 20th, 2022 to August 20th, 2022. The reason for the requested extension is due to the delays in the construction process at Copper Fox. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I segregated this because they refer to planning. We usually just vote on this and move forward. And I've talked to Mr. Markovic, and I've also talked to Planning Director Dylan Pipinich out there. So he could answer any questions. If anyone has questions, Mr. Pipinich is willing to answer them. But maybe call him up, answer any questions.
Thanks, Commissioner Fisher. Director Pipinich, do we have any questions for him? Oh, Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much again, Chief Executive. Mr. Pipinich, is there any reason that we would need to send this and refer this to your office, or would we be okay approving it today?
Commissioner Anderson, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson, for the record, I'm Dylan Pipinich, Planning Director. What has happened in the past is that it's been referred to the Planning Department and we give an update on all of the conditions of approval of the preliminary plat. As Mr. Markovic stated previously, most of them are complete. There's 13 conditions of approval of that preliminary plat. What does need to happen is that we need to enter into a subdivision extension agreement. That was done with the previous 2 extensions, so you know we have to draft one of those and enter into that for whatever time frame that Copper Fox is requesting.
Thank you, Director Pipinich.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Thank you, Dylan, for coming up. I would make a motion at this time that we concur and place on file communication 2022-38.
We have a motion and a second to concur and place on file. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote?
That should be going to the Planning Department, though. Well, I don't
And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
9 yea, 1 nay.
9 yea, 1 nay, motion passes. Moving on to item number 20, communication number 2022-42, J.P. Gallagher, Chief Executive, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization for me to sign the general release and settlement agreement between the Pool Company Incorporated, SMA Architects, Markovic Construction Incorporated, and Butte-Silver Bowl for damages arising from a leak discovered in the Butte-Silver Bowl pool located in Stodden Park in May 2020. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Reason for segregation on this one is I just would like a little more input from you. I read the agreement and the $21,680 settlement, and I'm just want to, be confident that we're not going to run into future problems. And if we do, is Butte-Silver on the hook, or are these three companies still liable? There's just some questions I thought would be nice to answer in public. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. So to answer your question a little bit on this is the age of the pool now has extended past our warranty. The issue that arose during this time was covered under warranty with the pool company. The pool company, we had some difficulties going back and forth with that. Markovic Construction and SMA agreed to be part of the damages to get this claim settled without any obligation from Butte-Silver Bow to the damages there. But based on the warranty situation, to ask if would Butte-Silver Bow be on the hook if this was to occur again, yeah, now we would, because we're past the warranty period of where we were. But we feel pretty confident in the winterization plan that we have in place now. I would say that I wouldn't agree that the pool company did a great job of preparing our guys in the past for doing this, but we feel confident in what we're doing now in preparing the pool to be winterized.
Thank you, Chief Executive. I think that's an explanation that satisfies me, so I would make a motion to concur and place on file communication 2022-42.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to concur and place on file. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to Section 3, Ordinance and Resolutions introduced to Judiciary. We have one resolution, resolution number 2022-07. Please note it will be referred to Judiciary. Moving on to Section 4, Ordinances and Resolutions for Reconsideration. Commissioner Shaw. Oh, should we go to the clerk first to read the caption?
A resolution of intent to present to the qualified electors of the city county of Butte-Silver Bow, Montana, the question of whether to impose a 3% local option excise tax on the retail value of all non-medical marijuana and all non-medical marijuana products sold in the city county of Butte-Silver Bow, and the separate question of whether to impose a 3% local option excise tax on the retail value of all medical marijuana and all medical marijuana products sold in the city county of Butte-Silver Bow, and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. The reason for this reconsideration is that on January 5th, we did move this resolution 2021-55 to final reading, but after that fact, our county attorney made a point that we probably should have had a public hearing, and so we are asking to reconsider this. It has to be done by somebody that voted on the prevailing side. Sean was going to do it, but he is not here tonight, so the next in command here is Commissioner Anderson, so I'm going to ask him to make that motion.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. I would make a motion that we reconsider the resolution of January 5th,
2021-55.
2021-55.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to bring back to reconsider. Anything on the question? Commissioner Fisher?
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Do we got to go back and clear communication 2022-23, which is the first communication on tonight's agenda?
I've been advised by County Attorney Joyce, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
Moving back to resolution number 2021-55, Commissioner Shaw, gosh. Oh, go back to Commissioner Anderson, gosh. I'm looking at you, you got your hand up. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. At this time, I'd make a motion to schedule a public hearing for February 2nd, 2022, and refer the resolution of intent back to the Judiciary Committee pending the public hearing.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to refer back to judiciary pending a public hearing. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And I think we're missing.
Third time?
And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to section 5, ordinance and resolutions for final reading. First one we have is Council Bill number 2021-08, ordinance number 2021-08. Clerk, please read the caption.
An ordinance amending Title 15 of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code, BSBMC, entitled Buildings and Construction, amending Chapter 1510, entitled Fire Code, and specifically amending Sections 151060, entitled Article 78, amended, Sale of Fireworks, and providing for an effective day herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I would move to place Council Bill number 2021-08, ordinance number 2021-08 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to final reading. Anything on the question? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I know this has been kicked around a lot through judiciary, but I don't see how a cut in 4 days of sales is going to eliminate the people that wanted less time and things. And I just don't know that we've accomplished anything by doing this, so I will be opposing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Anything? Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. A quick question for County Attorney Joyce, if I may. County Attorney, it was something that I never thought of all while we were discussing that, but it just came up tonight with the fireworks that are often set off with the Chinese New Year parade on Mawa. Is that something that should be included in this as it's setting off and not selling? Nothing is sold, so it wouldn't really be impacted, but it does set them off. Is that something that's covered under their special use, or is that something that should be in this ordinance?
Commissioner Anderson, County Attorney Joyce.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson, I believe the ordinance as currently written does also talk about not only the sale but the use of the fireworks. So if you wanted to allow the Maywa to have fireworks, you probably should include that. But if you're going to do that, you're going to have to amend the ordinance on the council floor.
Yes. So what I would do is, at this time, thank you very much, County Attorney Joyce, would be to make a motion to concur and pass Council Bill 2021-08 2021-08, ordinance 2021-08, with the amendment to include the special event for the Chinese New Year.
Commissioner Anderson, County Attorney Joyce, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Commissioner Anderson, since this is on final reading, you can't make that motion without looking at the specific language of the resolution and saying what line and page you're amending and having it amended right now on the floor, so that it's before you all to know exactly what language is being added to the agenda. So you could refer this back to the Judiciary Committee if you wanted to make further amendments to the ordinance, or you're going to have to know exactly what amendment you're making and state what line and page you're amending, and have somebody draft that right now before you take a final vote on it.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. And I'd just like to add, I know that a lot of times when we've done fireworks outside of the ordinance itself, that we've done through a special event permit.
Yeah.
And so that may be a better way to do this, because that date rotates. I know it's a Saturday, always in the first Saturday, but based on the length of time and the effort that's been put into this, that might be a way to go this. Commissioner Anderson.
No, that's what I was kind of considering when I was debating on whether or not that motion should be made, but if it would be fine with the special use permit. But that being said, I would drop my motion.
Okay. And Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. In the past, we've had this Maywa Society ask us to allow them to have fireworks on a one-time basis, every year. And I'm looking at the application here, if it says anything about fireworks, their event application. I guess, I don't know, it's probably they want it on the 2nd, is it? The 5th?
The 5th.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking they could put in a communication to ask, in addition to what they got today, to have permission to have the fireworks, but it would require a special meeting, so I don't know. I just quickly was looking through this, hoping it might have said something in the application where it was approved, but didn't make it on the letter, so it doesn't look that way. Any advice, County Attorney Joyce?
Commissioner Shaw, I believe we do have a regular meeting prior to this if they wanted to submit an amended special event permit. They could do that. So.
And David probably didn't know that. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the previous people did know that, so.
Yeah. So I would suggest that somebody reached out.
To be fair, excuse me, I'm sorry,
Go
Chief
ahead.
Executive.
That's all right, Commissioner Shaw.
To be fair to everyone else, that we require that they ask for a special, permit, not permit, but just a one-time permission. It says it right in our ordinance that any special event that would like to have something needs to come before council and get our approval. So I wouldn't just let them do it. Since there is an opportunity to come back, it doesn't change their plans or anything like that. It's just a formality, but that's what I would recommend. And I could even call Dave if you want and let him know.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Shaw.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody else agrees with that or not.
I-
On the question, so.
Yeah, I think we have a remedy to the issue, at least for this year. And so if you'd reach out to Mr. Stonehawker, that would be great, and I think we could resolve this problem. All right. So anything else on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
6 yea, 4 nay.
6 yea, 4 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2022-01, a resolution amending the budget during the fiscal year after conducting a public hearing at a regularly scheduled meeting of the Council of Commissioners and, clerk, please record the caption. I just like to read
You were
today.
doing so
I
good.
read to kindergartners this week. I'm all about it now.
You were doing great. A resolution amending the budget during the fiscal year after conducting a public hearing at a regularly scheduled meeting of the Council of Commissioners in accordance with Section 764006 MCA appropriating unanticipated revenue to the Butte-Silver Bow Health Department from the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services, Public Health Emergency Preparedness Grant, and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to place resolution number 2022-01 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2022-02. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution amending the budget during the fiscal year after conducting a public hearing at a regularly scheduled meeting of the Council of Commissioners in accordance with Section 764006 MCA, appropriating unanticipated revenue to the Butte-Silver Bow Health Department from the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services Immunization Grant and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to place resolution 2022-02 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like, oops, Commissioner Anderson, it looks like yours didn't register. Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution 2022-04. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution amending the budget during the fiscal year after conducting a public hearing at a regularly scheduled meeting of the Council of Commissioners in accordance with Section 764006 MCA, appropriating unanticipated revenue from the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals for the purpose of purchasing cat kennels for the Butte-Silver Bow Animal Shelter and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place resolution 2022-04 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
Moving on to Section 6, Ordinance and Resolutions for Emergency Suspension of the Rules. Commission, we have resolution number 2022-06. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move for the suspension of the rules for the purpose of passing Council Resolution 2022-06 by waiving subsection 7 of Rules 36 of the Rules and Order of Business of the Council of Commissioners, thereby having it considered for advanced passage without reference to the Judiciary Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to suspension of the rules. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving back to ordinance resolutions. Resolution number 2022-06. Commissioner Shaw.
Clerk, please
Clerk, please read the caption. Yep.
A resolution requesting appointment of special deputy prosecutors from the Prosecutor's Services Bureau of the Department of Justice and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to place Council Resolution 2022-06 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to final reading. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to any public comment on any public matter not on the agenda tonight. If you have anything that you would like to speak of, please come up to the mic and tell us your name and address and what you would like to speak to us about. Seeing none, we'll move on to, please note all the calendar and meetings that we have in order. And I would move to make a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Everyone acknowledged by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Have a good night.
So, quick question, who's better behaved, the council or the kindergartners?
The chief executive's got to read big words. It was about Martin Luther King's big words. I wanted to say big words tonight.
I'm watching my figure get bigger and bigger.
I've got one here, thank you.
You know what I actually did yesterday, after I left?
If not, I'm sure Dave will come back next week. If not, I'm sure he can come back next week.
Thanks, Bart. The issue with him
Hello, Dan Callahan.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good.
What's going on?
Oh, same old shit. Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking at all this dough that's out there now.
Sorry,
And then this personnel committee and budget and finance. I think it's time to go after those savings. There's plenty of money, even in each project fund. And so,
that's true.
you know, put the work that we're doing on the doctor and all that stuff, that's gonna require people and all that.
Oh, yeah.
This can just build it into the budget.
No, that's, yeah, no, absolutely.
Because I think about 3 cents.